Today we are going to talk about prepositions and punctuation. Or in other words, the small things that can make a big difference. Let's eat grandma, or let's eat grandma. Punctuation can save lives. It's the difference between eating grandma and eating with grandma. But before we get to punctuation, we'll look at prepositions first. And prepositions can be quite tricky business. It's fairly easy in your native language, you feel what's right, but when you're learning a foreign language, it's not that clear. So she said, you can get on the airplane. And I said, no thanks, I'm getting in the airplane, not on top of it. So should it be on or in? Should it be at school or in school? Why is it i Vennesla when it is på Lillehammer and Lillehammer is quite much bigger? Why are you interested in something, keen on, but good at? Why is it i Barnehagen but på skolen? It's still an institution. And when do we say at 8 a.m. on the first Friday in September? Who decides that? So there are some rules which we need to learn, and it doesn't matter that we don't like them, we just have to deal with them. Prepositions very often deal with the orientation and movement in space, which seems quite straightforward, in, at, on, for, from, and so on. But we have to bear in mind that there is no one-to-one correspondence between the prepositions. So the Norwegian på can be translated as in, at, on, about, and perhaps some others I didn't even think of. And to make it more difficult, we can use prepositions metaphorically or idiomatically. We can say break up, go ahead, get over, run across, and so on. And it doesn't necessarily mean to run across a field. It means to meet someone. So who knows? Who knows what to use where? Well, a good dictionary would know and can give you advice when you look up words. It often states what prepositions go with it. And you can also try Google or Gramophora, as I showed you in one of the earlier videos. In addition to the normal use of prepositions about space and time, there are phrasal verbs. And these are verbs which can require a preposition. For example, listen to, look at, wait for, and so on. There are some verbs which have optional prepositions, such as drink or drink up. Both of them are possible. And there are verbs which have idiomatic prepositions. For example, put out, which means extinguish. Put up with, which means tolerate. But you should keep in mind that these idiomatic phrasal verbs are rather informal, and thus you should mainly use them in spoken language or when you are, let's say, writing a short story, but not if you're analyzing, let's say, a movie. They do sound informal in writing. And now we'll look at punctuation rules. There are some differences between English and Norwegian here as well. For example, when it comes to capital letters, English capitalizes the names of days, months, holidays, and other special days. So, for example, January, Tuesday, Easter, and so on. Norwegian does not do this. So you say januar with, or you write januar with the small letter. And actually, English has had such a strong influence in Norwegian that nowadays we often see speakers of Norwegian using capitals in these cases. And that's not correct in Norwegian, but it comes from English and it's starting to be established in Norwegian as well. English also capitalizes job titles, nationality and religion terms, and titles of books and articles. And here we only capitalize the lexical words. So and, the, of, and so on will be small, and only the words that carry a certain meaning, nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, and so on. When it comes to quotation marks, you should always set your word processor to the language you are using. So if you are writing in English, use these quotation marks. If in Norwegian, use the lower ones. It is not a big deal, but it just makes the writing neater. When it comes to apostrophe, there are again some differences. You can use apostrophe to replace missing letters, but you know that you should not do this in formal written work. You can say can't instead of cannot, don't instead of do not, but if you write it's, it can mean it is or it can mean it has. He'd can mean he had or he would. And because of this ambiguity, because it's not clear what you mean, that is the reason why you should not use it in formal writing. Apostrophe also marks possession, and here it's different than in Norwegian because it comes before the S. You cannot just put the S on top of a noun. You have to use apostrophe S, for example, cats, boys, and so on. But in plural, which ends in S, you need to use it after the S. So boys in plural would have the apostrophe after. However, people doesn't have doesn't have S in plural, thus you can use the normal apostrophe S for possession. And in names which end in S, such as Dickens, you can use both. Both of them are correct. And last but not least, the comma rules. Here, many Norwegian students make mistakes because commas are not as frequent in English as they are in Norwegian. So very often the texts written by speakers of Norwegian are over-commatized. There are commas everywhere where they shouldn't be. There are places where commas are obligatory in English as well. And that's between items on the list. For example, I need to take the dog, the cat, and my suitcase. 3 things separated by commas. Also around additional information, as we learned in the lecture about relative clauses. Tony, the guy I work with, can be rather rude. The guy I work with is additional information. It is separated by commas. He left really early today. Not that I care. Not that I care is a comment, additional information separated by commas. You should also use commas before and after addressing someone. Let's eat, Grandma. Or Alan, close the window, please. Alan is the address to the person, close the window is the information, and please is again additional piece of information, additional comment to be polite. Commas are also obligatory before coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating ones are the ones and, or, but, and some others. When there are 2 clauses involved. So I wanted to go camping this weekend, but it is raining. I never wanted to go there, yet she wouldn't let it go. So there are 2 clauses which are separated by commas. And if the subordinate clause comes first, we also need to use commas. Because he left, we were not able to finish. Since you insisted, I booked the hotel right away. When the subordinate clause comes first, it gets a comma. However, commas are not obligatory, but often helpful to the reader if there is a long introductory comment. This is not the subject, it is just the setting of the scene. Being a hardworking and dedicated student, comma, Sam passed his exams easily. Or after organizing the whole thing for weeks, comma, Susan felt tired. The beginning is just introduction of the topic, setting the scene. When the beginning is a subject, we cannot use the comma there. The dedicated organizer working on this for weeks was fired. You can never separate the subject and its verb with a comma. So only if it's setting the scene. Commas are further not possible when we are connecting clauses without a conjunction. Peter wanted to leave, I wanted to stay. This is not possible in English. It is possible in Norwegian, and there are very many mistakes connected to this. We can say instead, Peter wanted to leave, but I wanted to stay. Or Peter wanted to leave, semicolon, I wanted to stay. So if we use semicolon, that's correct. And before subordinating conjunctions, such as because, since, although, if, and so on. So he left because you told him to. The comma shouldn't be there. We should say he left because you told him to. When the subordinated clause comes last, we don't need a comma. The same here, I will never forgive you if you do that. You should not say write that. You should say I will never forgive you if you do that without a comma. And when it comes to emoticons or emojis, whether you use the old-fashioned ones or the new ones, you should be very careful here. It's okay to use them when you are chatting with your friends, but do not use them in writing. They are not suitable for whatever you deliver to your teacher.